Corsica, and she would always be ready, always on the go, and she'd go playing tennis, diving off the diving board, and going down to the beach.
Well, the day that she brought me to get Simba, she didn't know I was gonna get Simba, but I'm very grateful that we did get Simba, and she's my favorite teddy now, so it's a very happy day. Thank you, Carol.
Well, it's so hard to pick them. That's the problem. There's so many times when we had such good times. But I will always remember when we went to Paris together, and we rented, and it was in the early days of Airbnb. We rented a little Airbnb. We climbed up 4 marble stairways to get to this apartment. And it was tiny when we opened the door. It was so small. We just fell around the floor laughing at how tiny it was. Did not look that small in the photographs. And then we discovered that it had a double bed, but it was barely a double bed. So we slept in a double bed together that night, and we read David Sedaris, Me Talk Pretty, one day about his experience of negotiating France for the first time and taking French lessons. And we rolled around the bed laughing all night long. We could not stop laughing. We couldn't stop laughing long enough to read the next paragraph. We were peeing in our pants. We were afraid we were waking up the sophisticated Parisian neighbors in the thin walls from apartment to apartment. The windows were open. It was a hot summer's day, and the courtyard could hear us giggling and snorting our way through David Sedaris's experiences. It was so much fun. That's Carol to me.
We were at some rustic cabin, and the guy had deer heads on the wall. So I took the deer head down and put it in Carol's face, and then shook the bed with my knee until she woke up. You can imagine waking up to horns. You know, all she could see were horns. I can't imagine myself doing that to anybody now.
Did she kill you at the time?
Well, she said she was speechless. When she woke up, she couldn't think, she couldn't make herself talk.
Oh.
Favorite memory about Carol? Probably when we went to our holiday in Spain, where it was Carol, Grania, Catherine and I, and we were staying in this little apartment, but I don't remember much about staying in it. I just remember how much we struggled to find it. It took about half an hour driving around these tiny winding roads, big blocky apartments like towering up either side of us, and I remember being so bored. I had worn down Mum's battery by the time we had got halfway there, and I just remember being so bored. And turns out we were driving on the pedestrian walks. There were no cars driving around. I think we saw one, maybe. It might have been another tourist. But I think Grania was already at the apartment, and then she told us where to go. We told her where we were, and we drove around for another 10 minutes before finding the apartment where we were staying. And we looked at the wrong one first, because it looked like it when we checked it up on Google Maps, but it wasn't. It was a different one. And I just remember, I was laughing in the cars half of the time, and poor Mum and Carol were both so stressed, but I just remember when we got to the apartment at the end of the day, we all had our showers, and we just kind of relaxed around for the last bit. And I think that was my favourite memory of Carol.
I always remember when we would stay with Carol in her house for the summer. When I was really little, in the morning I would wake up and Mum would still be asleep, and I would go over to Carol's room and I would open her door to see if she was awake. And you know Carol, she's always kind of half awake. So I would peek my head in and she would always just scooch right over in the bed and I'd crawl in with her. and she'd turn on cartoons. We all would always watch this funny one called Papyrus. It was about a little boy in ancient Egypt. She'll definitely remember it.
I was going to work from my old house up in Leopardstown. I was going down Brewery Road, and I saw Carol coming around the corner in her Fiat Punto with a cup of coffee in one hand and curling tongs in the other, and she was flying around the corner where all the bums trying on her way to Crumlin to work, and I was going, oh my God, what a crazy woman. She was really, I could see how much she liked her work, and how she was hell-bent to get there on time,
I think one of my earliest memories and one of the sweetest memories I have of my mum is when, being the youngest of 4 kids, there was always somebody else around. But on these occasions, my mum would come up and pick me up from Holly Park School, and she'd either walk up from our house or she'd cycle a bike and she'd collect me, and if we walked down together we'd be chatting away about the day. And I had this big yellow clunky old suitcase kind of backpack, school bag, but it was like a suitcase. It was so square and awkward, but it would hang on your back. It had straps, and Carol would hold it up behind me to take the dead weight of it off my back as we walked down the road. And I always really enjoyed those times together. If she came up on the bike, it had a little seat for a kid to sit on it as well, and I felt really special just to have my mum to myself on those occasions.
All of these memories started flooding back that were all about holidays and travel. And I just think that is wonderful because that's really stuck with me. To me, what I value in life is seeing the world, and I still have aspirations to see more of the world, but I think through Carol I've seen so many. So immediately it was flying into JFK, renting a car, and sitting in the car with Mum, and we're all falling around the back of the seat because we weren't used to such huge American cars with big footwells, and Mum saying to us habitually, "Be quiet, be quiet, stay still, calm down. I'm in a strange country driving a strange car on the wrong side of the road." And we all, of course, had no clue what that must have been like. But now we're adults ourselves. We, of course, know how amazing that was, that this woman took 4 of us across the Atlantic on a regular basis. And boy, am I glad she did. They were like the highlights of my life. And it was just such a relief leaving Ireland in the 80s. It was so depressed economically. And there we were to sunny America with all its bright new ways. So immediately New York, then Ocean City, Salisbury, the beach, holiday, and all the memories there, riding the waves in Ocean City with Grandma and Granddad warning us not to park in the hot sand because it will affect the tires of the car that he had just lent us. Then going to Florida, meeting our aunts and uncles in Florida and our cousins that we'd never known of. Going to Texas to meet our uncles and our cousins there. Colorado, meeting our auntie and uncle and all our cousins there. Such amazing trips. And that lovely value and connection with our family. And boy, that must have been really hard to keep connected with a family from Ireland with America, and yet Carol did it, and not many of her family did the opposite trip, so that was incredible. So all the travel, I think, and then Carol and I did an amazing trip to Egypt, and we went scuba diving in the Red Sea. That was amazing. That's a standout one for me as well. Yellowstone Park with Eva and Mike, it was amazing. And I just remember Carol giggling one night in the camper van, saying she couldn't stand it anymore, that there was little bits of grit that had got into her socks, and she needed a shower and needed a bath. And Eva and Mike kept promising us that we'd get to these hot water pools, and they were natural pools, and we'd get to have a bath there. And when we finally got there, I don't know what, 2 or 3 days into the trip, there was moose poop all around it, and none of us would get in, of course, because we were too squeamish. But boy, Mum, you had a great adventurous spirit and you've passed it on to us. And I'm always seeking that wonderful holiday vibe that I obviously caught a glimpse of when I was young and you were arranging the trip for us. So thanks for that. Thanks for all those memories, Mum, and I know we're going to make many more.
Definitely, that came very easily. I have to say one of my favorite moments with Carol is when I had Grace in the hospital and Mum was with me, and they wheeled me into the recovery room, and it was just my mum and me. It was just Carol and me, and I had packed a little snack bag full of orange juice and Snicker bars, and we were both sort of just ecstatic and on a high, and we were tucking into our goodie bag of Snicker bars and orange juice and chatting away. So that was a really good memory.
This is a weird one because it's not actually my memory. It's something that was told to me by Catherine, and it was years ago when before myself and Catherine were going out together, she met this other guy called Ferdia, some guy, and they were in the process of breaking up, and he had come around to the house in Foxrock and was standing on the door and having a discussion with Catherine, and Catherine was really upset, and you came out, and in my mind I have this picture of you throwing a bucket of cold water over him on the porch and telling him to get lost. But what Catherine tells me is that you said, you comforted her as she was upset, and you said to her in these words, "He's not worth it." And that always just stuck me. I thought, what a nice thing to do for a mother to stand by her daughter when she was obviously very upset. And if it wasn't for your intervention on the step that day, Catherine might have ended up with a newt hunting, bat chasing nerd instead of Catherine spending her days with a gnarly mountain biking type dude. So I'm very grateful to you for that, and that's my really weird memory of something that I was never there for. I'm sure there are others, but that's one that I think about sometimes.